This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Joining me now is John Brummett with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Always good to be with you at the beginning of the week.
Good to be here, as always.
Yes, you got a reprieve from Razorback football this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't tweet anything about sports. I was
Sadly
disappointed.
It turns out that I don't really care about college football because if there's no Razorback game, nothing interested me. I tried to care about Alabama and Tennessee, and I couldn't figure out who to root against most. So
Really?
I read a book, you know?
I find in those instances I always pull for the team that's losing.
Yeah, well, that's a good rule of thumb.
All right.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Let's begin with the presidential race. We're almost about a week away from Election Day, and this race still hasn't changed much since we last sat down. There has been quite a bit of activity, but I would say two monumental events were, one, we had another presidential debate, and we had a 60-minute interview that was off the rails. Either one of those things changed the trajectory, in your opinion?
It is so hard to say. This is such an unusual situation. But as one who favors the Democrats in this race, watching the debate, which I tried not to do, I was just going to watch it on a playback, but Twitter got me engaged, so I plugged in. I thought Joe got tired at the end and made a serious blunder when he just decided we're going to shut down the oil industry. Over time, but the words, shut down the oil industry, and yes, when Trump says, are you going to shut down the oil industry, invited for him, I thought, trouble in rural Pennsylvania where the fracking is a big economic deal. I thought, all that matters anymore, I'm thinking, Joe, are swing voters in battleground states, and they're none more important than rural voters in Pennsylvania. Why couldn't you have punted that? And I thought that was a big deal. I think the concern about that, which was real, not just me, because Joe went on the tarmac that night before he left to fly back to say, hey, reporters, come over and let me tell you what I should have said in the debate. So it was that serious, but it hasn't stuck. It hasn't changed the trajectory. Now, it may have changed it in some rural areas of Pennsylvania where voters delivered the upset victory for Trump over Hillary. That's what is worrisome. But I'm not hearing that. And what I think happens is there is so much going on. There is so much, we're just overwhelmed with information and oddity and outrage and drama that it's been engulfed by the 60 Minutes outtakes, the 60-minute performance. Mark Meadows, the White House Chief of Staff, goes on Jake Tapper Sunday, and we're not going to control this pandemic.
Yeah, waves the white flag, basically, in some people's eyes. Yeah.
Other nations may have been able to, but this one's not. I mean, it's just so much happening that one event doesn't seem able to change the trajectory.
Fire hose news cycle that we deal with, that's been consistent for really the last 4 or 5 years. So.
It has been, but this is now the last 2 weeks of a major election. And there are things that normally begin, you can watch a debate and see somebody invite trouble by stating something not wisely, and you can then take a poll or you can check the public temperature and it's had an effect. I think right now, it's just not the case.
See, I think this cake is baked. I'm not sure I don't think there's an opinion to sway in rural Pennsylvania right now. I think they've made their mind up. They either like the president, they don't like the president. I'm not
Well,
sure
the polls show 49-45, so that would be 6%. And I think most of them are rural folks in Pennsylvania who are willing who might be naturally willing not to do what they did before and vote for Trump over Hillary, but to go with Biden, who might have been affected by that. That was my thinking. I think you may well be right. It's baked. And maybe those undecided voters are conservative women in suburbs who are thinking of voting Democratic for the first time because of their disapproval of Trump. Who are they? We don't know. But maybe baked. And that's what people are starting to say. And I think the Democrats are getting a little overconfident. This cake is baked. It's baked. It hasn't been moved. I've seen baked cakes collapse like soufflés, and I thought Hillary's cake was baked, but it wasn't.
In the last 10 days, that race changed.
Yeah, we don't have any Comey. We don't have.
Let me get your take on this interesting phenomenon that's happening this time. We are seeing huge numbers of people voting early. They clearly want to be on the record. You voted early.
First day of early voting.
So that in case you die between
I
now and
didn't want to
election.
die and not get counted. Yeah.
But we're seeing like big numbers in Florida. We're seeing big numbers in Texas in particular.
Texas
What
is
does all
wild.
of this, when you read the tea leaves on this, what does all this tell you?
Well, that's the question I've been asked. Is this just a matter of more people voting, or is it the same general presidential election electorate, but wanting to vote early because of concerns about the virus, or just fired up and want to make sure they get counted? I think it's all of that. I think interest is greater in this election than in 2016, and maybe the biggest since '08 when Obama had the great inspirational coalition working. But I think beyond that, it's more a matter right now of people who might normally wait till election day don't want to, either because they're just anxious to get it done. I had a guy in line tell me, I'm voting today. This was the first day of early voting at Fletcher Library in Midtown Little Rock. He just thought I needed to know. I'm voting today so I can disengage. That's what he actually said. You know, then
There's some truth to that.
and then there
It's done. There's nothing that's going to change your vote or your mind after this. So,
and the
hey.
Texas early voting has been massive.
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't asked, but this whole Texas thing, is Texas truly in play for the Texas Democrats to compete for the state house? And maybe there's a Dallas Morning News poll yesterday has Biden up by 4 over Trump in the state of Texas. And then you think, well, going against the oil industry would probably affect that, but the early voting is so enormous that cake may be baked. And Kamala Harris, I read, is going to go to Dallas on Friday. Is that because they have a chance to win, or because they want to make Trump spend some money down there to hold it so that he can't spend it in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania? Probably the latter, because there's a lot of chess that goes on. Even so, everything looks cooked for the Democrats. This is their election, which is what worries me more than anything else.
So let's talk about what's going on in the 2nd Congressional District. This race still appears to be heading into the last week of the campaign, neck and neck. Some people would say conventional wisdom is French Hill still has a slight advantage because he can run up those numbers outside of Pulaski County. I'm not so sure that Joyce Elliott might not set a record for turnout in Pulaski County. That's the thing I'm kind of watching. 60%'s kind of been the conventional wisdom of how a Democrat can do here. What if she exceeds 60%? That changes the outcome of that race.
That's what this is all about, largely. Well, no, it's not what it's all about, but largely about. She, because of who she is and the campaign she's running, and also because of aversion to Trump and enablers, perceived enablers such as Hill, that's what's going. And the turnout of a liberal base in Pulaski County, African American voters, is possibly going to be beyond anything we've seen, and we've seen large ones before. Presidential races, or in 2 years ago with Frank Scott elected mayor, helping drive up Clark Tucker's numbers. The early voting lines and just the sense that you get is that it's bigger this time. And yeah, but that's not everything for her. She has to get more votes than usual, a higher percentage, more votes than usual for a Democrat in Pulaski County. And then she needs to hemorrhage a little less outside of Pulaski County, which means she needs out there to get some of these suburban and rural women who seem to be leaning to her, giving her a little more vote than, say, Tucker got. She needs to hold that. That's how she does it. Hill's job is just to remind all the natural conservatives outside Little Rock she's a liberal, and he and the national groups are going to spend the next several days telling you that. In case you don't know it already, they're getting ready to tell you that.
I've seen an ad or two to that.
There's going to be, we're going to have the full Battleground District experience in media this week.
Yeah.
It will be a barrage.
I'm looking forward to it.
Are you?
Yeah. I am. It'd
Well,
be
yeah,
nice to kind of be in the mix and not be
To be relevant.
bored, you know? I
Yeah.
mean,
But there is a point at which it becomes too much, you know?
you're not too hot and too cold. You're just right.
I'm just right.
Yeah. All
I'm
right.
just right.
Let's talk about the issues that'll be on the ballot, 1, 2, and 3.
All right.
You've written a column about where you stand on these.
Sort of,
Yes,
sort of.
Issue
Well, no.
1, yes or no?
Well, that's the sort of. I voted and I voted no. And as soon as I voted no, I regretted it.
You got to persuade somebody that's a no to go vote yes.
I
reverse
guess.
it.
I guess.
Why did you regret it?
Well, I voted no because just the concept, and concept matters, of embedding in our permanent constitutional law here in the state a specific number, a specific tax, is bad form.
Like we do for parks and tourism.
Right, that's also bad.
You don't like that?
And 2, to grant a permanent source of revenue and a permanent designated constitutional tax, to do that, to be spent by an agency that in another constitutional amendment has constitutional independence, and to do it at a time that the highway department wants to spend quite a bit of this money to finish the I-30 project downtown, which much of Little Rock is against, I just said no. But as soon as I said no, I thought, you know, rural Arkansas and this state in general has substandard highway infrastructure. We're a motor vehicle culture. So maybe somebody will go out there and vote yes to offset what I regret.
You might need to write a column about that. Just, will somebody please make up for my perceived mistake?
I do think that Asa Hutchinson's new ad, in which he's driving looks like a red pickup or something.
The governor does get driven around by
Yeah.
state
I was
police
surprised.
detail.
I don't know if he was actually driving or that was all computer generated. I hope it was computer generated because it makes me nervous. My only thought when I watched this ad, which was heavy yesterday during the football games, is, Governor, you're talking about safety on our roads. If you'll watch where you're going, we'll do better with safety on the roads. Because he's just going down here talking. And I've had several people say they had this, I had somebody say, that ad scares me to death. I think he's getting ready to crash. I don't think they would put that in an ad.
Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin could become governor if something tragic were to happen. Let's hope not. Issue 2,
yeah.
let's hope not anything tragic happens.
Right, yeah.
So,
Let's for the record, we're against tragedy happening
Yes.
to our elected leaders
Issue
or to
2.
anyone.
Issue 2.
Issue 2 is legislative trickeration. Issue 2 is
Trickeration?
yeah, trickeration.
Is that a word?
That's a George
Fisher
George
phrase?
Bush word.
Oh,
George W. word. Remember? Trickeration.
Well, I remember strategery.
Strategery and trickeration. And which is what this is. This basically gives you a ballot issue that indicates the legislature is imposing term limits on itself, more restrictive than now, or at least some sort of term limits, using those magic words, term limits, which have always been successful on the Arkansas ballot. This basically says we're going to limit ourselves to a little less than we get now, and then we're going to be able to go out for 4 years, then we can come back and do it all over again. That kind of trickery, is offensive. And I'm to the point that I don't think term limits makes a darn. Whether we limit terms or we don't.
We get good legislators.
We get
and bad
good legislators and
no
bad
matter
legislators.
what.
Yeah, and I'd prefer making it like jury duty. Everybody just gets a thing in the mail that says you need to go down to Little Rock and make some laws for the next 90 days. It would work as well as what we're doing. As long as you've got a good governor and good legislative leadership. So I voted no on that.
Issue 3.
Issue 3 is the one I care about. I care about the other two, but the issue 3 I feel most strongly about. This is the measure to say, you folks like David Couch and others, or whatever groups want to do it, who presume to write your own initiated acts or initiated constitutional amendments and go get our signatures and get them on the ballot directly in a form of direct democracy. It's how we got medical marijuana. It's how we got the casinos.
Minimum wage.
Minimum wage. That's been too easy, Amendment 3 says. The legislature is saying, we need to make it harder. Rather than meeting a threshold of signatures in 10 counties, you need to do it in 45 counties.
15 counties.
15
to 45.
15 to 45. And thank you for correcting me when I get things wrong. And It's also saying this idea that you turn in more than enough, but the signature verifiers throw out enough that you go under the threshold, that you get a cure period and you go back and get some more, we're going to stop that. You get it right the first time. This is the legislature saying, we're tired of you people making your own laws. We'll make the laws around here, thank you, and there won't be any medical marijuana, there won't be any casinos. Yeah, that's what it means.
And we won't raise the minimum wage.
We won't raise the minimum wage. So it's funny because years ago I used to argue that California was a disaster because it had all these initiated acts and propositions, and I think largely that's so. And I wrote a favorable review of a book by the late David Broder about how direct democracy is not good. That we need legislature to make. The people don't need to be making their own laws.
Is this like issue 1? You're regretting that?
No, I don't regret it at all. I'm just saying that as President Obama said, his views on from civil union to gay marriage, they evolved. My view on this
on direct democracy
has evolved. Direct democracy is now better than it used to be to me. And I really resent, and I think the people ought to resent, that the legislature is saying, too easy for y'all to make your own laws. We're just going to make it harder. That's what issue 3 is.
He is John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Always good to visit with you.
Are we going to go next Monday on election eve?
Oh, yeah. We've got to set the scene. We've got to get your picks next Monday. What's going to happen on Election Day? So I'm just telling you right now, I want predictions.
I may have a headache next Monday.
No, I want a presidential prediction.
Yeah.
I want a Congressional District 2 prediction.
All right.
And, well, we probably won't go the ballot issues, but we're going to definitely do those 2 races.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with conventional wisdom.
Control of the Senate. That's the other one.
Oh, that's a big one. That's a big one.
I know. So you do some homework between now and then.
All right, buddy.
All right. Thanks.
You bet.
And that is all for today's Talk Business and Politics. I'm Roby Brock. Thanks for watching.